There's a specific kind of person who keeps everything inside. Their struggles, their victories, their heartbreaks, their joy. They don't post about their relationship. They don't share their problems. They don't announce their achievements. They don't cry in front of others. And everyone around them thinks something's wrong, that they're cold, detached, or incapable of real intimacy. But what's actually happening in their mind is something so deep that most people will never understand. What do they see that the rest of us are missing? Maybe that's you. Maybe it's someone you know. The person who smiles and says, "I'm fine," when they're falling apart inside. Who experiences profound emotions but never lets them show. Who keeps their inner world locked away like a secret garden no one else gets to see. They feel everything, deeply, sometimes too deeply. But they've learned that sharing those feelings doesn't make them safer. It makes them vulnerable. And vulnerability, to them, feels like standing naked in a room full of strangers holding knives. If you're that person, you already know what I'm talking about. If you're trying to understand someone like this, here's the truth. This isn't emotional unavailability. It's self-preservation dressed as privacy. This is the psychology of people who are emotionally private. When was the last time you told someone how you really felt? Not the surface version, not the socially acceptable response, but the raw, unfiltered truth of what's actually happening inside you. When was the last time you cried in front of another person? When did you last share a fear, a dream, a wound that still hasn't healed? Now, think about the people around you. They share everything. They post their feelings on social media. They cry to their friends. They tell their coworkers about their relationship problems. They announce every achievement, every struggle, every emotion as it happens. And you watch them do it and feel genuinely confused. Why would anyone do that? Why would anyone hand over the most vulnerable parts of themselves to people who might not handle them with care? Why would anyone risk being misunderstood, judged, or pitied? Why would anyone choose exposure over protection? You don't post when you're sad. You don't call someone when you're struggling. You don't share your wins because you don't need external validation. You don't explain your choices because your reasons are your own. You process everything internally, alone, in the privacy of your own mind. And people look at you like something's missing, like you're incapable of connection, like you're refusing to let anyone in. But that's not what this is. This isn't coldness, it's clarity. Because here's what most people don't understand about those who keep their emotions private. They're not emotionally unavailable. They're emotionally discerning. They've learned something the rest of the world is still trying to figure out, that not everyone deserves access to your inner world, that privacy isn't the same as secrecy, that you can feel everything and share nothing and still be living an authentic life. But that's only part of the story. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between physical exposure and emotional exposure. When you share something deeply personal, your body responds the same way it would if you were physically vulnerable, exposed, undefended. Your heart rate increases, your palms sweat, your stomach tightens. Because vulnerability triggers the same ancient survival mechanisms that kept our ancestors alive. And for some people, that alarm system is louder than for others. They're not being dramatic. They're not overreacting. Their nervous system is telling them, this isn't safe. Don't give them ammunition. Don't hand them the map to your soft spots. Keep your defenses up. For some, that guardedness came through accumulation, through years of evidence, through moments when they opened up and regretted it, the time they cried in front of someone and that person used their tears as proof of weakness, the time they shared a dream and someone laughed or dismissed it, the time they confided a struggle and it became gossip, the time they showed their real feelings and someone punished them for it. These weren't isolated incidents. They were patterns, data points that accumulated over years, building a case their conscious mind tried to ignore, but their nervous system couldn't. Eventually, their brain stopped coding emotional expression as safe because the data said otherwise. When vulnerability leads to pain enough times, you stop being vulnerable, not because you want to, because your body won't let you. For others, the privacy was always there. They didn't lose the ability to share their feelings openly, they just never had it. While other kids told their parents everything, they kept their thoughts to themselves. While their friends overshared every detail of their lives, they shared selectively, carefully, strategically. They weren't traumatized into silence. They just naturally existed in a more private, internal space. And that difference, that fundamental disconnect between how much they revealed and how much everyone else did, taught them early that they experienced intimacy differently. Both truths are valid. Both paths lead to the same place. Your feelings are yours. And sharing them isn't a requirement for connection. It's a choice. And refusing to share freely isn't emotional dysfunction. It's boundary setting. Let's talk about how this actually develops. Because the person who processes everything alone, who never posts about their problems, who keeps their achievements quiet, who maintains a calm exterior while chaos rages inside, they didn't start there. Maybe you were 7 years old and you came home crying about something that happened at school. You needed comfort. You needed someone to tell you it would be okay. And instead, your parents snapped at you. Stop crying. You're too sensitive. That's nothing to cry about. Toughen up. Or maybe they did comfort you, but the next day you overheard them on the phone telling someone else about your problem, laughing about how dramatic you were being. Your private pain became their entertainment. Your vulnerability became a story they told at dinner parties. You learned right then, showing your feelings gives other people power over you. Or maybe you were 10 and you told your friends about something you were excited about, something you'd worked hard for, something that mattered deeply to you, and they rolled their eyes, made a joke, changed the subject. Your joy became an inconvenience. Your pride became something to diminish. You learned, keep your wins to yourself. Celebration makes people uncomfortable. Or maybe you were 14 and you finally worked up the courage to tell someone how you really felt about them, and they told other people, and suddenly everyone knew. Your private feelings became public knowledge. Your vulnerability became a source of humiliation. You learned, the things you share will be used against you. Or maybe you were 20 and you opened up to someone you trusted about something you'd never told anyone, and they listened, they nodded, they said all the right things, and then, months later, during an argument, they threw it back in your face. Your deepest wound became their sharpest weapon. You learned, people collect your vulnerabilities like ammunition. Your brain filed it all away. Every time emotional openness led to pain, every time sharing your feelings made things worse instead of better, every time someone proved they couldn't be trusted with the tender parts of you, every moment you wished you just kept it to yourself. And here's what your nervous system learned. Emotional privacy equals safety. Sharing equals risk. The less people know, the less they can hurt you. The more you keep inside, the more protected you remain. So your body started responding before your mind caught up. When someone asked, "How are you really doing?" your throat would tighten. When you felt the urge to share something personal, your chest would constrict. When emotions rose to the surface, your system would shut them down before they could escape. Your brain knew what was coming. Even when you wanted to open up, your body said no. Eventually, something shifted. Not dramatically, just quietly. One day, someone asked how you were feeling about something difficult, and instead of explaining, you just said, "I'm fine." And then you moved on. You processed it alone. You figured it out by yourself, and you realized you felt safer that way. That relief told you everything. Your body had been trying to protect you all along, and when you finally stopped forcing yourself to share things that felt too raw, too real, too risky, your nervous system exhaled. Emotional openness lost its appeal. Sharing your problems started feeling like handing strangers loaded guns. Posting about your life felt like performing for an audience that didn't actually care. Talking about your feelings felt like giving away pieces of yourself you'd never get back. You learned to process everything internally, to be your own therapist, your own cheerleader, your own comfort. And it wasn't just that you stopped sharing, you actively prevented others from getting too close. When someone asks, "What's wrong?" you deflect immediately. "Nothing, I'm good." When a friend tries to dig deeper, you change the subject. When your partner wants you to open up more, you feel this uncomfortable tightness in your chest, almost claustrophobic at the idea of exposing the parts of yourself you've worked so hard to protect. People think you're being distant, closed off, but that's not what this is. This is your nervous system saying no to something that's supposed to bring connection, but has only ever brought pain. Because emotional vulnerability doesn't feel like intimacy to you. It feels like handing someone a manual on exactly how to hurt you, like giving them the blueprint to your weaknesses, like standing in the center of a room and announcing all the ways you can be destroyed. And maybe that sounds harsh, maybe it sounds cynical, but here's what people don't understand. You're not rejecting connection. You're rejecting the kind of connection that requires you to bleed in public to prove you're human. Because if people really knew you, they'd understand that you feel things deeply, that you care intensely, that you experience emotions with a richness and complexity that would surprise them. You just process it privately, internally, in the sacred space of your own mind where no one can mishandle it. But even with that clarity, the guilt comes, because society has very strong opinions about people who don't share their feelings. You're supposed to open up. You're supposed to be vulnerable. You're supposed to tell people when you're struggling. You're supposed to share your victories. You're supposed to cry when you're sad. You're supposed to talk about your problems. And when you don't, when you keep it all inside, people look at you like something's wrong. Why don't you ever talk about your feelings? You're so closed off. I feel like I don't really know you. Why won't you let me in? You never tell me what's going on with you. Don't you trust me? And underneath those questions is an accusation. You're emotionally unavailable. You're holding walls up. You're refusing real intimacy. If you just tried harder, if you just opened up more, if you just shared what you're going through, if you just let people see the real you, everything would be better. But they don't understand. You did try. For years, you shared. You opened up. You let people in. And they proved, again and again, that they couldn't be trusted with what you gave them. So you stopped trying, not because you're broken, but because you finally started honoring what feels safe instead of what you're supposed to do. There's a term psychologists use, emotional self-preservation. When you experience repeated harm around emotional vulnerability, your brain begins to associate openness with danger. You teach yourself not to share too much. You reduce emotional expression so the consequences don't hurt as much. And while that might sound sad, it's actually a form of intelligence. Your nervous system prioritizes safety over connection. When connection has historically led to harm, you choose protection instead. So you stop expecting people to understand your inner world. You stop waiting for someone who can handle your depth. You stop hoping someone will earn access to the parts of yourself you keep hidden. And in that absence of expectation, you find something unexpected: peace. But here's where it gets complicated, because even people who genuinely prefer emotional privacy still notice things. They still track quietly who asks and who doesn't. They still notice when someone tries to understand them versus when someone gives up. They still feel the loneliness of being surrounded by people who know your name, but not your heart. You can process everything alone and still wish someone would see past the mask. You can prefer privacy and still crave being truly known. You can keep your emotions locked away and still hope that someday someone will be worthy of the key. We all do this, even the ones who claim total self-sufficiency, because connection is human. Even when you've learned that protection matters more, part of you still remembers what it felt like to be seen, to be understood, to share something real and have it held with care. Psychologists call this avoidant attachment adaptation. It's when you convince yourself you don't need emotional intimacy because part of you fears you'll never find someone safe enough to give it to. And it develops in people who learned that emotional needs were dangerous, that it was safer to need nothing than to need someone and be disappointed again. So when you say, "I'm fine," what you're really saying is, I've made peace with the fact that most people can't handle my real feelings, and I'm protecting myself by not sharing them anymore. That's not dysfunction. That's survival. Now let's talk about the other path, because not everyone who keeps their emotions private got there through pain. Some people just naturally exist in a more internal space. They've always been this way. They looked at the cultural obsession with emotional expression and felt genuinely confused. Why does everyone need to know how I'm feeling? Why is sharing my problems with others seen as healthy while processing them privately is seen as avoidance? Why should I post my joy for validation when I can simply feel it myself? These aren't defensive questions, they're honest ones. And for some people, emotional privacy just makes sense. They see emotions as personal experiences, not public performances. And while they understand why others need to share, they can't manufacture a need that isn't there. They're not damaged. They're not missing something. They just process intimacy differently. Maybe they're deep thinkers, people who work through emotions internally before they're ready to express them externally, if ever. Maybe they find meaning in solitude, in reflection, in the quiet processing of their inner world. Maybe they've realized that not every feeling needs to be shared to be valid, that some experiences are more sacred when kept private. For these people, emotional privacy isn't protection, it's preference, it's authenticity. They're not avoiding pain. They genuinely feel most aligned when their inner world stays inner, and they've stopped pretending otherwise. When someone pushes them to open up, they say no, not because openness hurts them, but because it feels unnecessary, forced. Like everyone agreed that emotional expression equals emotional health, and they're the only one willing to admit that's not universally true. Both paths, trauma and preference, arrive at the same destination, a carefully guarded inner world that most people never get to see, and both deserve the same validation. But society doesn't see it that way. Society sees someone who doesn't share their feelings and assumes something's wrong. They're damaged. They're avoidant. They need therapy. But you don't need fixing. You need understanding. Because here's the truth most people miss. The ones who keep their emotions private aren't incapable of intimacy. Often, they're the people who listen the most carefully, who hold space for others without making it about themselves, who show up when it matters, who remember small details, who demonstrate care through actions instead of words. They don't need to broadcast their feelings to know how to love people. They do it quietly, consistently, in ways that actually build trust. They just refuse to participate in the performance version of emotional intimacy, the version that requires oversharing, constant updates, and proving your feelings are real by making them visible to everyone. And maybe that's what threatens people. Because when you maintain privacy, you reveal that emotional exposure isn't mandatory for connection, and that makes everyone else uncomfortable. So they call you closed off. They say you have walls up. They insist you're missing out on deep relationships. They say, if you just opened up more, we could be closer. But you're not missing out. You're just choosing differently. You're saying real intimacy doesn't require constant emotional disclosure. Real connection doesn't mean giving everyone access to everything. Real trust isn't proven by how much you reveal. It's proven by how safe someone makes you feel. And that clarity, that refusal to perform vulnerability, is actually a gift, not just to yourself, but to everyone around you, because it sets a boundary. It says, my inner world is sacred, and you have to earn access to it. Here's what happens when you stop forcing yourself to be more emotionally open. At first, it feels strange, maybe a little isolating. You see people posting their feelings online, friends calling each other to vent, couples who share everything, and part of you wonders if you're missing something. But then something shifts. You notice the absence of regret. You're not replaying conversations where you shared too much. You're not wondering if someone's going to use your words against you later. You're not performing emotional availability for people who don't actually care. You're just existing peacefully in your own internal space. And in that peace, you start to remember who you are when you're not trying to prove your humanity through emotional display. You feel more grounded. You trust yourself more. You feel lighter because for the first time in years, you're not carrying the exhaustion of constantly explaining yourself to people who will never fully understand. That's when you realize this is what emotional health actually looks like for you. Not the open, expressive version everyone celebrates, but the private, internal version where you're not betraying yourself to make others comfortable. And maybe you process your grief alone. Maybe you celebrate your victories quietly. Maybe you never post about your relationship. Maybe you keep your struggles private until they're resolved. Maybe when someone asks, "How are you?" you say, "Good, thanks," and actually mean it, because you've handled whatever wasn't good on your own. And that's okay. That's not sad. That's self-knowledge. That's honoring how you actually operate instead of how you've been told you should operate. Because emotional expression was never really about the feelings themselves. It's about authenticity. And the older we get, the more personal that authenticity becomes. What felt safe at 15 might feel exposing at 30. What felt like connection in early relationships might feel like performance in later ones. And that evolution isn't loss, it's growth. You're not the same person who once shared everything. And maybe that person needed external processing, needed others to validate their feelings, needed to speak things out loud to understand them. But you don't anymore. You've learned that feelings don't need an audience to be real. That depth doesn't require disclosure. That you can experience profound emotions and never speak them aloud, and they're still valid, still true, still yours. And maybe the greatest gift you can give yourself is permission. Permission to feel everything and share nothing. Permission to be private in a world that demands transparency. Permission to keep parts of yourself sacred and untouched by others. Permission to say, "I don't want to talk about it," without guilt, because you're not broken for keeping your emotions private. You're not cold for processing internally. You're not avoidant for maintaining boundaries. You're not missing out on connection by choosing who gets access to your inner world. You're just honest, and in a world that demands emotional performance, honesty is radical. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing missing. You're not broken. You're just someone who learned that not everyone deserves a front row seat to your soul. That protection isn't the same as disconnection. That privacy isn't the same as pretending. And maybe the rest of the world will catch up eventually. Maybe they'll learn what you already know. That depth doesn't need to be displayed. That intimacy can exist in silence. That the most profound connections are built not on what you share, but on how safe someone makes you feel when you choose to share. So when people say you're too private, when they push you to open up, when they say you have walls that need to come down, when you keep your heart guarded while others wear theirs on their sleeves, don't let them convince you something's wrong. You're not closed off. You're selective. You're not emotionally unavailable. You're emotionally protected. You're not missing out. You're finally living in alignment with who you actually are. And that's the truest kind of intimacy there is.